Contented Media presents Dr. Bitcoin, the man who wasn't Satoshi Nakamoto, an original podcast series with Mark Hunter and Arthur Van Pelt.
Hello and welcome to a surprise bonus episode of Dr. Bitcoin, the man who wasn't Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, as those of you that have listened to our previous 5 episodes will know, we hadn't planned to do anything on the podcast until Craig Wright finished his testimony next Tuesday. But as those that have followed this trial this week will know, there has been so much to digest, discuss and debate since Craig Wright has been on the stand that we simply couldn't have done it justice covering the whole lot in one episode. So Arthur and I thought we'd jump on a podcast tonight to cover what we've seen so far and hopefully try and get a little bit of analysis in there before Friday starts, and we have a whole lot of other stuff to cover as well. So Arthur, thank you for joining me at such late notice. This is going to be totally off script. We're just going to try and cover the points that we've seen so far in the trial. But overall, how have you found experiencing Craig Wright on the stand over these past 4 days, 3 days it should be, sorry, after all the build-up, 3 years worth of build-up to this point? How have you found it?
Good question. I have followed quite a few parts of it, of course, because I was rather early with a video link, and somehow I got lucky with an. I'm into a room, Zoom room. Yeah, that's how it's called, probably from the organization themselves. And when I open up the list of people in that room, it are all the lawyers, it are the witnesses, it are, for example, Dustin Trammell, Ira Kleiman. I see a lot of people that were like, whoa, why did they put me in that room? Well, not that I'm talking with them. I mean, it's just the honor of being into a Zoom room together, watching the same thing. And what I understood so far is that I'm lucky that I have a screen from Zoom with more features than the average screen that they give that they made available for the rest of the people watching. And today we understood that already 650. I think that's quite a lot, but this is of course a high profile case. What do I think so far? What I've seen, there are a few things that mildly surprised me. Overall, I'm not super duper surprised, and I will tell you why. Of course, I have been closely watching the McCormack case. I've been closely watching the Kleiman case. I've seen recordings. I've listened in. I've read transcripts, and you see Craig Wright doing the same trick over and over again. And COPA is not anything different, so it's a bit predictable, so to say.
So we're not going to be able to go into detail on the last 3 days of testimony for obvious reasons, but what we're going to do is just go through our general impressions of how Craig is handling himself and the way he is defending himself, and we'll also pick out a few of our sort of top conundrums he's worked his way into. So what I'll do, I'll start off. If we can cast our minds back to the opening statements, there's so much build-up to these opening statements, and as far as I'm concerned, the COPA one didn't disappoint. The barrister, Mr. Hoff, went straight for the jugular. He was just like all the stuff that anyone who's listened to the podcast, anyone that knows anything about the story, they will recognise everything he was talking about. So all the list of forgeries that they're going to rely on, it's just one after the other, painting as such a damning picture. And I had a few thoughts on that one. Firstly, it was interesting that was, I mean, they always do, but the mainstream media, which Calvin Ayre was saying last week, no one's picked up on the mainstream media, how dare they? Well, they picked up on Monday and they ran with it, didn't they? Like the brazen lies and the fraud on an industrial scale. I was just like seeing some of those headlines was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was, because it's like almost a break of a tradition almost. We see now not only in the headlines but also in the reporting itself, in the content, that they it looks like that they have paid more attention to what is going on in detail in the case and in the details. I mean, when at day one, when they say that Craig Wright is forging on an industrial scale, that has been picked up quite a few times everywhere, which is like, wow, there were times that the mainstream media and even the well, let's call it the crypto media, wouldn't even mention such a thing, while we are, you and I in the podcast and my articles for even longer, we already... we did not mention industrial scale, but in fact that is of course, that's exactly what's going on. This guy is indeed forging on an industrial scale, and that was mentioned on day one. And we see several media picking exactly that line up. Wonderful, wonderful.
And I wonder as well, I think I tweeted this, that I wonder how many of his supporters, for them, it was the first time they actually heard about all this, because anyone that's behind the CoinGeek curtain that doesn't, that they're not allowed to be exposed to this, let alone the evidence, like the charges, let alone the evidence. This must have been the first time a lot of them heard about this, because they've just been thinking this case, COPA's got nothing, they've got no evidence. And this guy speaks for like 2.5 hours and lays down exactly everything we've known about, but they've not been allowed to hear. Do you think there was a lot of them that were hearing this for the first time?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, it has been, of course, known if you are following us and our group of debunkers. But yeah, of course, we are being ignored by the majority of the BSV fan club. And the Craig Wright apologists, they don't like us so much, of course.
Not much.
No, not so much. But so yeah, for them it is sort of new, and you can see how they are trying to cope with this reality. They are falling back on a new narrative that we have seen growing the last few weeks and months. They are hiding behind the wonderful tech of BSV. They say, well, even if Craig Wright is losing, it doesn't matter much. We don't depend on him. Or he is doing it on purpose, and he has a 5D chess game going on. And so they are hiding behind, pretty weird narratives, if you ask me. And and that's the fact that it was for me. I mean, the forgeries are not a surprise for me. This is already going on for so many years. But the narratives, the coping of the COPA cope, so to say, is for me an interesting part of to keep on following this trial.
So we had the opening statements from COPA, which were to the point, and they addressed the exact claims they've made in their particulars of claim. And then we weren't quite sure how Wright's team, his barristers, were going to try and challenge this. Did you manage to catch the opening statements from Wright's barrister, Lord Grabiner, isn't it? Lord Grabiner. Did you manage to catch his defence?
Yeah, part of it. Yeah.
So what did you make of what you heard?
Weak. Yeah. I cannot say otherwise. It was pretty weak. I mean, if you, I remember that he mentioned as what I perceived, and I might be wrong, but what I perceived as the major point that they are hiding behind is Matonis telling the people in some. It was in a blog post also in 2016. Same for Gavin Andresen, that they said to the crowd that. He is Satoshi. And I was like, whoa, is that all you got? This is old news. This is already...
Yeah.
I don't know. It's and you're trying to build the whole case around things like this against all the recently found forgeries, which are running in the hundreds now. It's amazing. We were reaching 528 the day before or the first day. I don't know how that went, and he's trying with 24 new forgeries. Well, what I suppose are going to be discovered to be new forgeries again. So we will probably see like 24 more forgeries brought in at the last minute. And then he is coming with Matonis and Gavin Anderson, having seen a signing session that nobody can verify and that he cannot even show in court as an physical evidence of a Satoshiness. I was like, wow, is that all, guy?
I know that
Baron Grabener.
That whole thing was so weird because the first thing he did, I mean, bear in mind we're all waiting to see how they're going to rebuff the evidence. The first thing he did was lay down the points about the special measures for Craig Wright's autism, which was a weird thing to be opening with. And by the way, none of the measures, when you think back to the measures that initially Craig Wright's expert wanted to put in to be informed of questions, he was going to be cross-examined with ahead of time, given extra time to answer these questions, all these measures they wanted putting in, he has had nothing. He's been absolutely fine. He's never become emotionally dysregulated. He has been a textbook witness. So all these measures they wanted to put in, and they mentioned right at the start, were totally irrelevant. It was weird to have that as their opening gambit. And then the second thing is he went into a rant about BSV versus Bitcoin. Like, that's straight out of the Craig Wright textbook. And it's funny because I remember saying, I think I mentioned it a few times, that does Craig Wright like Shoothness because they just do what he says? Well, they did what he said there. They went straight for the why is BSV better than Bitcoin thing until he got cut off. And then, like you say, the major defense initially was the signing sessions. And Craig Wright has pretty much disowned the signing sessions because he says that keys don't prove identity. And yet the whole thing he's saying, as you say, is like, oh yeah, he signed these addresses. But he doesn't even stand by it. He's undermined his own barrister's argument within his first day on the witness stand, didn't he?
Yeah, not only that, it has become known during the Kleiman case that at some point in 2016, but probably 2017, that was around the time that Robert McGregor left what I sometimes call the fraud squad for, libel case coming my way, probably. No, but seriously, Craig Wright was offered and paid $1 million, I presume, US dollars.
I think it was Australian.
Or probably Australian, but okay, then it is slightly less than if I remember well, in US dollars. But around it, it was mentioned in that contract that he would get $1 million for the coming out as Satoshi, the life story rights for him, and then becoming known in public and accepted as Craig Wright as Satoshi. Now, but in 2017, he had to pay that money back to Calvin Ayre and his friends and partners and whatever, where that money came from. And that was known in the Kleiman case. That means that even Calvin Ayre and his friends did not see the signing sessions as being successful. Well, and of course it wasn't. And then they are using that as a major point of Satoshiness in this case. Sorry, I'm not getting what their strategy is going to be to have this guy being announced and being ruled as Satoshi. And this is really not enough.
The other thing I found weird is that they went on from that. They sort of went into detail. He went into detail about the dying days of that attempt. And they spent like 15 minutes on the suicide attempt. They were talking about suicide notes and hospital reports and blood being washed down the shower. I'm like, how on earth does this back up your claim? Why are you spending so long on the suicide? It was like CSI Surrey. It was so strange. So it was a really strange way that they kind of planted their flag. And bear in mind that he's as far as I'm aware, Craig Wright's own team is not going to be able to speak to him on the witness stand. It's all cross-examination. So then they're not going to have many chances to put their story across. And as you say, that's the best you can do. I mean, for obvious reasons, as we have seen in the last few days, they were never going to go into detail about each of the forgeries because Craig Wright's got a fantastic excuse for each one. So that's why they didn't go into those details. But they never even mentioned that was going to be the case. So yeah, I found the opening statement from Craig Wright's side a little bit odd, that it didn't even address the charges that are being put to him.
No, that I have the same impression. I found it quite weak. That is the only word that I can put on it.
And so looking at we won't go through the days that he was on the stand individually because we haven't got time to go into that much detail. But the thing that I noticed on the first day is that there were a lot of people from Craig Wright's side who I assume are American or non-English, and they have no idea how a British trial of this sort works. They are used to, like we saw with the Kleiman case, a jury that has no idea what to expect. So you've got both sides giving them the evidence from both sides. So they're putting the case and they're cross-examining. The difference in this case is that the judge, like 50% of this case is already done. The judge knows Craig Wright's defense. He has already read it through like 11 witness statements and all the evidence and all the forensic reports. So the judge has already...
Even more, I think. They're already on right number 14, I heard.
Yeah. So, I think number 11 or whatever it was quite close to the trial. So, however many it is.
Yeah, because that was a massive one of, I think, 300 pages or something.
I know. So, he's had like double digits of witness statements and everything else. He knows Craig Wright's argument. So, that part is taken care of. So, what's happening now is purely the cross-examination side. And so there's no, that whole first half has been skipped. And the job of the barrister is not to try and press Wright on certain points and not to argue with him on certain points. His job is to walk Craig Wright through his witness statements and try and trip him up. To listen to how Craig Wright deals with the questions he's got over the issues that COPA have got with his witness statements. So they ask him the question, they try and get him to elucidate on certain things and try and trip him up by getting him to undermine his evidence, undermine his witness statements, change his mind on certain things. They're walking him through it and trying to set traps for him. So that's why the barrister asks him questions, listens to the answer, and then goes on to the next one. And a lot of Craig Wright's team are like, oh my God, he's beaten him up. He's so savage. The guy just can't respond. He's not supposed to respond. It's not his job to respond. He's not a technical expert. They're making notes. And where it seems to me Craig Wright will lose this trial is when Patrick Madden and Dr. Plax are on the stand. Because they're the ones who are going to be said, right, you put this in your report. Craig Wright made this argument. How do you respond to that? And that is when they're going to it's going to be like a double negative for Craig Wright, because he's going to have the forensic report going against him. And in many cases, he's going to have the forensic experts just totally ignoring or demeaning his response, isn't he?
Yeah, I will quickly go to my Twitter because I just came across something that passed, I think, today, but I missed that. And one of my followers, Spice, you might know her probably.
Yes.
Let's quickly go there. Okay, I will read the tweet just to give an impression of what is going on. Again, this is Bit Spice. Follow her. She has wonderful tweets every now and then. Craig spouting technobabble on why the forensics experts on both sides made mistakes. And then Mr. Justice Meller reacts. One of the advantages of having independent expert witnesses is if the court agrees they have given an objective, suitably supported opinion, the court can rely on their opinions. So I suggest you focus on their opinions, because at the moment, unless they are completely undermined, it's likely I'm going to rely on them. So instead of disputing the process by which he reached these findings, I suggest you, and then he means Craig Wright, of course, you focus on the findings, okay? Now, this already sets the tone for what we can expect, what the judge is doing with these experts.
Well, that was an interesting one, because that came, today or yesterday, I think it was today. Because obviously, I mean, as people following this trial will know, the first thing Craig Wright did was dismiss the qualifications of Patrick Madden and Dr. Plax, just totally threw them under the bus and said they are not qualified to be looking at this. And that was a pretty shocking moment. And the thing is, he might disagree with them, but it won't go well for him, because he is saying that these guys don't know what they're talking about, but I do. But his evidence, his testimony, is not going in as evidence. He can rebut all these things as much as he wants, but his home tests of all these different platforms, I've done it on my phone, that is totally irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is what is written in those forensic reports that, as you say, the judge is going to be looking at. And regardless of the merits of what he has to say, the judge will not look kindly on the fact that he is not even willing to listen to expert testimony that goes against him. And he won't look kindly on the fact that Craig Wright has waited until the day of the trial to raise the issue that he doesn't like the experts that have done these reports. It really is a bad look for him. And the reason he made that comment today was because for the first 2 days, Craig Wright was just saying these guys are inexperienced, unqualified. And then today, I think again it was today, he called Patrick Madden biased and went to a massive rant about how biased Patrick Madden was. So that's why I think the judge today... that's why Craig Wright today changed his argument a bit. He said, these aren't findings, these are opinions, because the expert reports don't include the methodology. I'm a scientist. When you produce reports like this, you must mention your methodology so other people can replicate it. And I mean, I don't know what English law is, but I would assume that because the judge has not once said to these two experts, oh, by the way, where's your methodology? You do not need to put methodology into forensic reports in the UK.
No, I don't think so either.
The judge has approved these two experts. They've given their reports, and Craig Wright says they're not doing it the right way. And that's why he's changed. He says they're not findings, they're opinions. And so that's why the judge today said, no, I'm sorry, you might think that, but this is my court, and this is what I'm taking on. I'm taking at face value.
Yeah, but that's true. And talking about a scientific methodology, if that is really an issue, they will explain that, if I remember well, that was also a point of attention in the Hoddelnot case in Oslo, Norway, 1.5 years ago, 2022, around September that was. That was the same thing. It does not need to be mentioned in the report, but it will be discussed during the days that the experts are going to discuss these things more in depth. But it will be later during this trial. So at this moment we cannot say much about it. But I do expect that it will be a point of attention during those days.
Yeah. So the big thing that most people have picked up on is something that anyone that's followed Craig Wright in his legal shenanigans will be well used to by now, is the way that he answers questions. And we've just seen more of the same, haven't we? Like, he'll be asked a relatively simple question, and the answer he'll give is so rambling and so abstruse and so around the houses that you lose track of what he's even saying. And I don't even know how the barristers can keep track of what he's saying. It's so rambling and so convoluted. I can't think that the judge is going to be... I can't think it's going to be impressing the judge, because surely if you... I mean, it's not a couple of times. This is the thing. It's not like there's a couple of instances. Let's say like there's something with a computer program, like a clock stamp, a time stamp has been changed or something. There may be a few instances where you can legitimately go and say, oh yeah, server things and this and that, and the program did this. But it's every single answer. The guy asks a simple question, and you just know you're going to get a great big long rambling answer where a very specific set of circumstances has to have happened to create the thing that he says has been created, when the alternative is that he faked it. And it's not once or twice, it's every single time. So the judge is going to be left with this idea that to believe Craig Wright, he has to believe all these amazing Goldilocks kind of formation of things happened to create this one event, and not that he faked it. And I just can't think the judge must be getting pretty fed up with that after a short while, surely.
Yeah, that is what I expect to happen also, and then you can also add something else that I'm noticing for the last 2 days already, and especially today because I kept an eye on it while watching the video when Craig is feeling the pressure of the questions, and he knows that he is on a track, that he is being trapped into one of his lies, and that he cannot really explain very well a forgery. Then he turns his head and he is addressing his answers not to the lawyer of COPA anymore, but to Mr. Meller, Justice Meller, I have to say, of course. And he does that all the time. I mean, I see that happen a few handfuls of times during the whole day, and that is, indecent, but also telling how, sort of stressed in his way he is under the pressure of the questioning. And you already noted it a bit earlier. Of course, the other side of the story is that the lawyer who is asking the question is all the time looking down to his notes, trying to pick up what it's more concentration, I think, trying to pick up from the ramblings of Craig Wright what he needs to hear, and what you also see then is that he is sometimes just walking away, like, okay, I will let you ramble on for a few more sentences, and then I come back to the microphone, and also very often I also see that. More than a handful, probably 2-3 handfuls of times I see that during the whole day, that he interrupts Craig Wright, that he wants to move on, and otherwise they are losing too much time on irrelevant details that were not asked.
Well, that started on the second day, because on the first day, I don't think he was quite prepared for how much Craig Wright would rant and ramble, and that's why from the second day it was very much like, no, you've answered the question, we'll move on. And he got a clear idea of what he was dealing with on that second day. There's a few things, like you said, there's a few moments where he'll ask a question, then sort of wander off, or he'll take his glasses off and look just perplexed. Look at the camera. But then also,
all the time when he's taking off his glasses and putting them back on, I mean, oh man, I'm enjoying that so much.
But there's also, I think, I get the feeling this is a tactic that barristers use, because I wondered, when I first started watching, I was like, why is he always looking, like Craig Wright's off to his left, why is he looking to the front the whole time? And the reason why is because he's trying to meet the judge's eye. He keeps clocking the judge, especially if you notice when Craig Wright is answering these really strange answers he's giving, talking himself around the houses. He'll look at the judge and he'll just look baffled. And I think it's a way for the barristers to try and get the judge to be like, are you hearing what I'm hearing? And I think it's a little tactic that they use to do that, and it could be quite useful. But the last thing I'll say on him is that I am quite impressed with how he can listen to what Craig Wright is saying, and as you say, the verbal manure that's being flung his way, he can pick out the nuggets of gold that he needs, and he can then be like, oh no, that doesn't sound quite right, and then he'll know how to reason against it. But he'll also have a reference, really quickly have a reference. He'll flick back a few pages, sometimes through half the book, and find a reference to catch him out. And I think obviously these guys are trained in that, but it's still quite impressive, isn't it, that you can listen to someone like Craig Wright, who is used to just talking and talking and talking and not having somebody interrupt him, and he can find immediate issues with what he's saying.
Yeah, you have to respect what these lawyers of COPA have to deal with, because it's not just 10 forgeries, it's hundreds of forgeries between thousands of documents. The the Madden reports altogether, excluding the last one that we are still waiting for the most recent. I consider them forgeries beforehand, but of course we don't know yet. But there will be another report. I think we are now on 4 or 5 Madden reports, and they are already. I read somewhere in one of the filings that it is already above 1,500 pages. So these people have to find their way in technical stuff into. So many pages, they have to find the connections, the greater story behind it, but still keep in contact with the details of it. And then indeed a rambling nutcase on the opposite, who is very arrogant, and with every sentence that he speaks, he will always try to make you feel sort of miserable and a low life because you are not worthy of talking to me. That is the way of how arrogant Craig Wright is talking. So I can understand that if you're not mature enough, not having a sort of shield against that type of talking, then you can easily get irritated and even worse, get angry. But you should not do that, of course, in a courtroom, and especially not when you represent the opposite party. Then you have to stay calm. So I have a lot of respect for those COPA people, and especially this King's Counsel, Mr. Hoff. Sorry. They hats off for this guy, for his dossier knowledge and his. But still, you can see him indeed sometimes being baffled, surprised, flabbergasted. My God, what a nonsense do I have to keep up with here? But on the other hand, he is very focused, and at times he will just say, "Yeah, we're going to disagree here. We are. It's our opinion that you have been forging and doing nasty things, etc." He will keep pushing back all the time. And he is exactly doing what is expected of him. You said it from the start already. It is not his role to counter all the points that Craig is making. I mean, let's take already an example. That was I think it was yesterday when it came up, and that's a major thing now. It is memed like crazy. The Citrix environment. Craig.
This is Citrix. Citrix has become the unintended hero of this somehow.
I was like, wow, unbelievable. I mean, I'm an IT guy, so of course I by the way, I never worked with Citrix itself, so of course there might be in the nitty-gritty of Citrix a few things but he is accusing a Citrix environment. I call it mainframe on Twitter once, and I was corrected. It's called actually metaframe, but well, whatever. It's a Citrix environment that he has been using, and he is accusing the Citrix environment of doing things that is, if you copy and paste documents and files on a Citrix environment, it can happen that files or pieces of files and text content of files merge with each other. I was like, oh my God, Citrix is used by the top 500 on the Nasdaq, for example, or on Wall Street. I mean, wow! You seriously think that they are using metaframes of Citrix doing this type of stuff? I don't think so. Nee, of course not. I mean, there might be a bug in some software that you're using on Citrix, but Citrix itself will never allow those type of things to happen. I mean, it's an operating system that is, of course, secure enough for, like I said, for many enterprises in the top 500. So, no, that is not going to happen. And on the other hand, I discussed it late yesterday or early this morning, I don't remember, the time flies, with somebody who said, but it can happen. There are known issues on Citrix that copy and pasting with files on Citrix, then pieces of those files can merge. I was like, yeah, but we are talking about an environment here where it happens hundreds of times that pieces, for example, I took the example of the Bitcoin white paper, that specific pieces of text end up in other documents like the LLM and proposal and thesis and blacknet papers, etc., to make it look like that it has a connection with the Bitcoin white paper, because the same type of text is being found, and it is even appropriately reworded to make it fit in that other document that is being backdated with Bitcoin white paper quotes. So that is not a random issue with files being merged during a corrupt copy and paste thing. That is deliberately and systematically creating forgeries. There is no other conclusion possible. So Craig Wright blaming Citrix, I was like, wow, my jaw dropped on the floor. Yeah, and many people picked it up actually, because it was in no time. It was an I was like, oh, am I the only one? But immediately, within hours, I noticed that the other people also, Hodlnote picked it up, and then many others picked it up, and then the memes started flying, and I collected several of them. I think 7 or 8 different images, cartoons, and stuff, and one I found hilarious. That is a rather famous meme of it's the robot from Terminator with a little girl hiding under a desk. I'm not sure if you know that meme. And you can put a text on the little girl, and you can put a text on the robot with a machine gun or something, with at least some rifle type of thing in the hands. And he is chasing the girl who is hiding under the desk. And they put the text Citrix on the Terminator robot, and they put the text COPA on the little girl under the desk. Wonderful. As if Citrix is killing the COPA case. Wonderful.
Well, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised, but this whole idea of him knowing better than anyone, it's been such a feature of these first few days. I think, again, anyone that has experience of him will know it's going to be that was going to be the case. But there was the Citrix one. There was, I mean, the one I loved was the notepad, the BDO notepad. He apparently knows more about the history of that company than the person who is in control of that product at that company at that time. You could tell the barrister was totally baffled. He was like, I don't think he could quite believe what Craig Wright was saying. He got him to repeat it 3 or 4 times. The absolute brass neck you can have to claim that you know more about a company than the company's employees, and especially the employees looking after that specific division or that specific product. Yeah. I mean, the issue he's got is that he has to argue every single forgery, and like you said, let's say we're up to 15,000 pages, I think you said, with these forgeries. He cannot allow one to be. He can't let one go. They all have to be counted. And so you come up with these crazy excuses that just test the boundaries of credulity and logic. And the deeper you go, the more of this tangled web that he is weaving. And there's just been so many instances like that where he claims to know more, not just more than IT experts, but like I said, more than these Chinese factory company owners, and more than this person, more than that person. His knowledge is so vast and so huge that he's like a walking encyclopedia, and he knows more than the specialists, no matter what their discipline. Yeah. And again, no rational judge is going to look at that and go, yeah, I agree with the guy here, not the person that ran the company.
And the BSV fans, they keep on cheering and
they love it.
They love it, but
he's crushing it.
And people who are looking at it with a normal brain, so to say, they immediately, you make claims, but you have no evidence. The evidence would be that you have another person from another company that was a predecessor of this Chinese factory, because I think it had to do with a few other companies that merged, and they were older than this Chinese company creating it, and then that other company also had. That is what he was suggesting. If he really believed what he was saying, he's lying because he just made it up either on the spot or he has been thinking about it before the trial, that he could use it as an excuse. It is unverifiable, and he should have the same type of evidence that was provided to the Bird & Bird lawyers or to Madden, whoever asked for it, that indeed the template was, I think, dated 2011, and it was first going into production in 2012. That is the story from the Chinese factory. Now, again, if you have really a case to bring to debunk such a claim of your opponent, 2012, then you have to come up with a template with a manager who is claiming from another company, sure. We already used this in 2007, because that is the date on on the minutes that
5 years out
Craig created. But then you have a case. Now you only have a fairy tale that is unverifiable, that has no support from physical evidence, and then we will go see happening what is also happening. What happened in Norway? That the evidence will be not considered as appropriate to support the case that he is Satoshi. Now, allow me one more thing. That was, somebody notified me on Twitter also about it. On that, because there is a brand name or a label called Quill, and behind that that is let's call it the brand of that notepad where you rip off those papers and you can make notes on them. Then that it says down on the right, it says Quill. Well, that's the brand, but behind it is an order number. So if you want to order specifically that paper, that notepad with that type of paper, that is how you order it at your dealer, and he will get it from the Chinese factory and deliver it to you. That order number did not exist before 2012, because that was the first year that it could be ordered from the market, from the I don't know how you call that in English, but stationary, I think it's called.
Yeah,
stationary dealer, and so it is so perfectly clear that not only from the template, the pressing templates from the Chinese factory, but also from the order number, that it was not available before 2012. So Craig can say whatever he wants, and he can jump high and he can jump low, but the judge will understand, because this is a really clever judge. I already noticed that several times. This guy is not easily convinced of the crazy stories of Craig Wright. I'm pretty sure about that.
And this bleeds into the whole Ira Kleiman conspiracy thing, because again, we've known about the Ira Kleiman conspiracy for a while, but the magnitude of this, like it really took off today. Every single chance he got, he was like Ira Kleiman did this, Ira Kleiman did that. He even today accused Ira Kleiman of sending documents to the ATO through his companies. He accused Ira Kleiman and his co-conspirators of filing documents with the ATO on the company's behalf without him knowing. It's an utterly ludicrous claim, and yet he thinks that that's the only thing he can possibly say. He's got to stick to this Ira Kleiman narrative. So he has to then insert Ira Kleiman into everything, including filing things from his own companies. And again, there is no evidence of this, and the guy, Mr. Huff, has pushed him on this a couple of times. He said, but you have admitted no evidence into these proceedings to back up these claims, have you, Dr. Wright? And he's like, I've mentioned it many times, but you haven't backed it up with any evidence, have you, Dr. Wright? And he can't say no. He has an inability to say yes or no when it's the perfectly obvious answer, because he knows it will weaken his claim. He reminds me of a politician on Newsnight when they're just badgered again and again to say yes or no, and he can't say it. And the judge is just not going to believe these stories, because you can't make these grandiose claims of a mass conspiracy, of mass hacking, and name individuals and not have a shred of evidence against them. And you can't even say, because he's not even gone to the police and said Ira Kleiman did this. It's all in his head, and he spouts it as fact. And I think he maybe even believes it himself at this point. I just don't know. His followers certainly do. And so... But like you say, the judge, without any evidence, the judge is just not going to believe this. And the more he talks about it, the more he brings in these excuses that are not backed with evidence, the worse it's going to be for him. But he just doesn't seem to understand the difficult position he's putting himself in, does it? He seems to think that these stories I don't know. He either assumes these stories are going to be enough for him to win the case, or he's so desperate he just has to throw something out there because he can't admit he's wrong.
Yeah, why not both? Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, if we are now looking at McCormack, Hodlnot, we've seen Kleiman, we've seen now COPA processing. This is a guy that for a while ago, I started to believe that he is indeed believing his own story. So he is now fully in the skin of being Satoshi. But yeah, I don't know the English word for it. You fool yourself in believing something that is not true, and then it becomes true for yourself anyway. And then you can, because it sounds convincing, you can convince your environment, or at least several people in your environment. He is what is called, it's nothing more than a con man, and con means confident. So he can bring it with a lot of confidence, and that is, convincing for a little group of people, but luckily the people with the brain, and especially so far no judge. Which judge has ever bought? Okay, he won won. He got a default judgment out of the Cobra Bitcoin case 1 or 2 years ago, but for the rest, he lost all his cases, and all the rulings are against him, starting with the Ryan case 20 years ago, and all the way up till now. He has not really won any case. The Libel cases he lost, the Kleiman case he lost, and nobody is really buying his stories. And what we see back in those rulings is what we also see as a narrative in all of his debunkers on. We circulate on Reddit and Twitter mostly, and a little bit on Reddit. I'm active. You too, I know, but nobody is buying it, and also not in the courts.
Well, what I mentioned today in one of the groups I'm in is that it's interesting because he is quite good at mixing the fact with the fiction. So he can take a story that exists. So, for example, saying about how his companies went into liquidation and they locked out of the building and this sort of thing, that the level of detail in that rang true to what he was saying. But what he then does, he then meshes into that a lie. So he blends 25% of lies in with 75% of truth. So it makes the whole thing sound feasible. And that's where the evidence is really important, because that's how he tricks people. He's really good at telling a story that actually happened, and you think, oh, really? And then you just a couple of little seeding of a few lies in there to back up his case, and you don't question it. And that's where the evidence is really important, and you can see that coming through. And that's how he's managed to fool so many people of a wide variety of standing into believing what he says, because he has the ability to do that. Yeah. That I also liked today how there was a lot of talk of the lawyers that he's gone through in the various cases. And there was a moment when he was talking about Vigborg Rhine in Norway, and he said he was really proud because he said, I'll rephrase that. He sounded very proud when he said that he ditched them because they didn't follow his plan. He wanted to make it a case about proving he was Satoshi, but Vigborg Rhine said, no, we're going to make it a case about the defamation, freedom of speech. And he ditched them because they wouldn't do what he said. So the next lawyers did do what he said, and he lost. So it's just like, you should not be boasting about that. You really shouldn't.
No, exactly.
There's a quote from a guy who called J. Nicholas Ross, who out of nowhere, I think, is on Twitter. He's come out of nowhere, and he seems to have really picked up on this case, and he's looked at it from a totally impartial point of view as a legal with some legal experience. I believe he has.
Yeah. He's into my topics also quite a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. So he knows what he's talking about, and he's baffled by the whole thing. He's been given some good perspective, and there's a quote he put out today, which I want to read because it sums up how I felt about Craig Wright's approach. He says, "What's telling about Dr. Wright's testimony is that it is both unbelievable and he's undercut any potential provenance of his reliance documents by confirming he has no clue when they were actually created. He's unable to establish verifiable dates of the versions of these documents. What's more amusing is his suggestions that as an IT specialist, he was ignorant of basic versioning rules where new instantations of a document are given their own unique files and metadata to preserve their authenticity." So I think that first bit is interesting because he is totally undermining his own evidence. And again, he's bringing in this suggestion, which again taps into the thing he mentioned on about Citrix, that software updates and therefore updates to creation date or metadata of files. And he's including accounting software in there. And this was like, I was like, well, I'm not an IT expert, so maybe I've misheard it, but he genuinely is trying to claim, isn't he, that files update as a system or software updates.
Yeah, sort of. And he also never heard of putting files as read-only files, for example, to protect them from editing. So, he undermines. And this is also something that I really do not understand. That no BSV fan is grasping this in any way, in any kind. That. Basically, not only COPA has now, let's say, debunked his whole series of files. I mean, the norm in the case is that you deliver a pristine, genuine, untampered file that is proving from the year 2006, 7, 8, 9, whatever, but from the early days of Bitcoin, that undoubtedly has not been tampered with, and that is proving that you knew about Bitcoin in that era. And when you admit, based on the evidence, that you admit that staff, people, laptops from your employees, whatever, it came from everywhere, software updates, Citrix copy-paste issues, whatever, he has all kinds of lame excuses, hacks, several hacks. There is no genuine evidence left.
Yeah.
None. And he admits it. So he is not only... And somehow the BSV fans think, he is winning the case because he is giving answers to... and he gives explanations on why things are not as they look like. And somehow they don't grasp that he is admitting that the file is indeed not as pristine, not as genuine, not as untampered as he was hoping and presenting them in the first place. What I noticed from the questioning, because we've seen 3 days of basically the same, but it are several topics, of course, that they discuss, but it are all the time the forgeries and how they came to be. And the critics all the time, at least numerous times that I hear from COPA's side, is that in the what do you call that? The trail evidence trail? No, custody. Trail of custody. Chain of custody. Yeah, that's it. That now during the questioning, it turns out that Craig has not been, well, let's say, incomplete, but the judge will look at it as being dishonest about the full custody trail of those files, because now he comes up with stories that not only he had access to those files, also many of his staff, and at some point he started mentioning like 300 people have been looking or maybe tampering on that file. I was like, oh my god! So you have been lying in your witness statements, and my god, and you just admit it. And there was also at some point, oh my god, my jaw dropped on the floor again. He admitted that he edited metadata of some file for specific, I don't remember the specific reason. I was like,
that was
god.
I think that was the one when he said he was doing for the students. He changed the metadata to show students how to change metadata using the Bitcoin white paper because he trusted the students not to say he was Satoshi.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was also one anecdote. Yeah, I remember that one also.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh my god.
What you said, actually, that brings me on to something that I almost forgot. When he was questioned as to why he didn't flag documents he knew were forgeries, his best answer was that he thought that the fact the chain of custody said that the laptops came from third parties and that his previous comments in other lawsuits would be enough for people to put together and realise that this specific document must be forged. What utter rubbish. This is the biggest case of your life. You are in charge of your evidence. And he seems to wash his hands of his ability to be in charge of his own evidence. But you've got at least a massive say in your own evidence. If you've got documents that you say are forged, and for whatever reason you are forced to put them into litigation, you make damn sure that your lawyers know that you think this is a forgery and it shouldn't be relied upon. You don't wait until it's gone through your solicitors, been signed off by you and your solicitors, gone to experts to be forensically examined, come back as a fake, and then say, I knew it was a fake, but I just didn't tell you. Utter rubbish.
Yeah, but this is going to bite him in the ass. I mean, and again, that is why I really cannot grasp how the BSV fans think that Craig Wright is winning, because the lawyer who is asking the question is looking down on his screen or on his paper all the time, and it looks like that he is humbled by Craig Wright's answers.
He does.
Seriously, he isn't. He isn't.
I know, he's given Craig Wright enough rope to hang himself, and this is one other thing that makes me laugh. We're coming up to an hour, so we'll finish in a second. But one thing that makes me laugh is these are the guys that bang on about 5D chess and Craig being a master strategist, and they just cannot see what's happening. It's such an irony that of all the people, they are the ones that cannot see what's going on here. And I mean, I don't even know if they're going to realise when it comes to the forensic examiners, because there's going to be there's no smoking gun as such. There's no big fireworks, no massive kind of presentations or whatever. The forensic analysts, they're going to be taken through what Craig Wright has said one by one by one. They're going to say, nope, he's wrong. Nope, he's wrong. Nope, he's wrong. It won't be dramatic, but it'll be steady. The weight of evidence is going to be what kills him here. And like you said earlier, he cannot. All he's got to do is produce one document, one genuine document to at least put a crack in COPA's case. But Whether he is right on some things or not in terms of why something has been tampered with, that almost doesn't matter, because you when you've got hundreds and hundreds of documents that have all been tampered with and you can't even produce one genuine one, it should be so easy to do, like you say. But there is not one document he has produced that doesn't have something wrong with it, that he has said is genuine, and they've come back and said, no, it's not genuine, and he then has to find a reason why it's been faked. So that sheer volume, that's going to count for a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about that sheer volume, what you also see then, that he needs excuses. The one is even more lame than the other. He is throwing so many people and organizations and lawyers and whatever under the bus.
Oh, it's incredible.
To get his story across. I mean, I remember Simon Cohen. I remember Win-Win. I remember Jamie Wilson. I remember Greg Maxwell. I mean, yeah, what people isn't he throwing under the bus for being involved in tampering with his evidence?
Yeah, this is the other thing. To believe his story, you have to believe that all these people and all these organisations, because, yeah, you've got those individuals. You've got the individuals that wanted to bring him down at his various companies in the past. So, yeah, Jamie Wilson, Greg Maxwell, Ira Kleiman. I mean, Ira Kleiman's driving the bus, but at this point, he's in full charge of this bus. But you've then got, you've got Simon Cohen specifically from Ontier, but Ontier in general, multiple times they messed up. Alex Partners, Travis Smith, even Shoesmiths are getting it in the neck for dealing with his evidence. You've got Patrick Madden, who's biased, and his own forensics expert, who's no good. Like, Judge Mellor has to believe that all these things that Craig Wright says are wrong with his documents, he's right about all those. All these things that are these sort of the non-forensic issues, that Craig Wright is right about all those as well. And he then has to believe that all these other people in various ways have either messed up or conspired against him to leave him in the position that he is in. The odds of all those things happening compared to him doing it are just minuscule.
Yeah, amen to that.
Well, we're coming over an hour now, and the idea is to try and get this out on Thursday night so people can try and listen to this Thursday night into Friday morning before Friday happens, but it may be the weekend before many of you catch this. So we will try and do our best to do something like this again in the middle of next week to cover the next 3 days of his testimony. But Arthur, thank you for speaking to me tonight. I know it's been a bit of a hectic time for you especially, so thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem. I'll see you next week, Mark.
Yeah, I'll speak to you next week for our part 2 of Craig Wright's testimony.
Yep.
See you then.
See you. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dr. Bitcoin, the man who wasn't Satoshi Nakamoto. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice to get these episodes the moment they drop. And if you enjoyed what you heard, we'd really appreciate a star rating and even a review to help us get this out to as many people as possible. Our monthly bonus episodes are available to download from our website for a small consideration. And if you'd like to access all these bonus episodes, plus these monthly updates a few days early and other goodies, you can do so by becoming a Dr. Bitcoin supporter. See the details in the show notes for information on how to do this, or head to our website, drbitcoinpod.com. That's drbitcoinpod.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at drbitcoinpod, and you can email us at drbitcoinpod@gmail.com. That's drbitcoinpod@gmail.com. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak to you again soon.
You've been listening to Dr. Bitcoin, the man who wasn't Satoshi Nakamoto. Written by Mark Hunter, with additional material by Arthur Van Pelt. Editing and production by Mark Hunter. This has been a Contented Media production.